All right, so today we're actually going to take a look at the last of the notes that we are going to do in chapter 3 in your book. I had people this morning that were asking me when we were going to get to a test over this chapter, and it's probably toward the end of this week. We'll see kind of how everything does go, but that'll work. We are going to, however, go through the last of the notes today, and I am purposely recording this because I know that like Riley has a funeral coming up, and Joey and Eric are going to be hopefully working on stuff tomorrow with this, and we'll see what else we got with everything. But anyway, so far in this chapter, most of the stuff you've done has been through the one variable stats feature on your calculator. We talked about like averages and measures of dispersion, things like the standard deviation, that sort of stuff. Today we're going to talk about measures of position, which do tell how one thing compares with others. Clear back at the beginning of the semester, I talked about the very first test I took at UNI where I thought I had flunked it. And then I started looking around at how everybody else did, and it turned out I had one of the top scores on that calculus test. And that's because the raw score doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. What does matter is how does yours compare with everybody else's score, okay? So there are a couple of ways that you can find measures of position. There's actually 3 or 4 we could talk about. There are 2 we're going to focus on. The first of which I'll guarantee you've already heard of, which is percentiles. That's because whenever you take like the Iowa assessments, one of the things you get back is a percentile score. What a lot of people don't really get, though, is what exactly percentile means. And what a percentile tells you is what percent of the group was less than your score. Now, there are a lot of people, like I said, that don't understand that, and I find that out pretty much every year at conferences because there'll be parents who get their kids' Iowa assessment scores, and they'll look at it and it says something like 75, and they'll say, I thought my kid was smart. Well, 75 is actually a pretty good score. It's not the best you can do, but it means you did better than 3/4 of the people that took that test. Of course, the parents are thinking is, well, 75% of the questions right would be like a D by Garrigan's grading scale, but that's not at all what it ends up meaning. It means that, yeah, you did better than 75%. And again, if you were at the 70th percentile, you'd do better than 70% of the people that took a test. If you were dead on average, you'd be at the 50th percentile. 50th percentile is actually the exact same thing as the median. It's going to be right smack dab in the middle. It actually is impossible to score at the 100th percentile. That's because it would mean that you did better than 100% of the group, but since you're in that group, you can't do better than yourself. You'd be doing better than 100% of the people, which would include you. You actually could have numbers that would round up to 100, although almost always with percentiles, like on things like the Iowa assessments or ACTs, they will round down instead. And the highest score you're ever going to see on those tests is the 99th percentile. So if you've gotten 99s, you did the best you ever could. Yeah, that's basically where it's going to end up happening. If you are absolutely at the bottom, you would be at the 0 percentile. I can honestly say I've never seen a Garrigan student that got that, and let's keep it that way. But that, yeah, would be, you probably wouldn't be smiling quite as much as that 0 is, but it would mean you're dead on 0. And again, the key thing is you always are talking about the percent that is less. I have also up there a notation that is showing you a lot of times if you see P with a little subscript, it just means a certain percentile. Now, I mentioned earlier that parents sometimes get confused about what percentiles mean. So do like state legislators. which is always kind of annoying for those of us that are teachers. Because you guys know that, well, for most of you until this year, for Meredith also this year, you had to take the STAR test. And you know that on that, the scores get reported out mostly for the school. It doesn't really do much for you, but the school has to report what we get to the Department of Education. And the goal that we're supposed to make is that all of our students will do better than the 40th percentile. That's our goal on the STAR test, which at Garrigan might be possible. If you went to almost any public school or to the state as a whole, that is literally impossible. Because the way percentiles work, 40% of people are going to do less than the 40th percentile. That's what the 40th percentile means. And that's actually why the way that they wrote that law, pretty much every large school for years has been on a list of what they call schools in need of improvement, which means that they have people that come from the state to look at all their paperwork every year. And Garrigan actually is very close to meeting that goal. Technically, we did not meet it last year, but we did end up with like 95% of our students above the 40th percentile, which is actually quite good. You guys, I'm sure, are all well above that. But, it is impossible to literally have everybody that's above that number. But again, percentile means the percent that's less. And I want to look at a few examples here. Here's just a list of all of the community colleges in Iowa, and this was the number of credit hours that students took at those colleges in various years. And so I'm going to ask a couple of questions about this, and I'm actually going to grab myself a calculator while I do. And you guys might want to grab a calculator as well, because it can't hurt on problems like this. We'll slip back into the picture for the people that are watching this on video. So I might ask you a question like, gee, we of course in our area have Iowa Lakes Community College. That's where you're going to get credit from for taking this class. So what's the percentile for Iowa Lakes? Anyone have any clue what we're going to do to figure that out? So what's percentile mean again?
You take all of the credit hours out together and then...
You're making it way harder than it is. No, you do not need to add all the credit hours together, because the actual numbers honestly don't matter at all. What does matter is where they rank. Yeah. Okay. And she's exactly right in what she's saying there. You look at how many schools there are, which it tells you at the top is 15. And remember, percentile meant percent less. So I think how many schools are less than Iowa Lakes? And that's why I just did 3 divided by 15, which I'm pretty sure is going to give you 0.2, which means the 20th percentile. Does that make sense to everybody? What would be the percentile for Kirkwood? And I just heard 93, and that's right. It's like 0.93 repeating, but we typically do just round to the nearest whole number, and 93 is exactly what you would have. That makes sense. So I am thinking of one of these schools, and the school I'm thinking of happens to be at the 60th percentile. Which school is it? I'm seeing Amanda kind of go like that, and she's thinking exactly right. Do you have an answer? Iowa Central, I'm pretty sure, is right. Because what you got to do is, first of all, figure out that 60% of 15 is 9 schools. So that means there's got to be 9 schools below the one we care about, which means the one we care about is going to be the next one up. And Iowa Western is the 9th from the bottom, so Iowa Central would be the one we want. Okay? Everybody see what I'm doing to come up with those? We're looking at another couple of examples. Here's another one. We're looking at how many students go to different Big Ten schools. Anyone know how many schools are in the Big Ten? 14, yeah. Yeah, back when I was a kid, it was 10. But, then we had places like Nebraska that joined, and more recently we've had places like Maryland that have joined, and so it just keeps changing. But yeah, it is 14 schools in the Big Ten. So we're going to start by asking you, what would be the percentile for Iowa, the University of Iowa? And I heard 14, and that's right, because you just do 2 divided by 14. That gives you 0.1428, etc. So it rounds to the 14th percentile. How about for Rutgers? The State University of New Jersey. And it is going to round to 86. Yeah, 12 divided by 14 is what you would end up wanting on that. Okay, so I am thinking of a school, and that school is at approximately the 30th percentile. What school is it? And I heard Illinois, and that's actually right. Because what you would end up doing is taking, since I said the 30th percentile, you'd take like 0.3 times 14, and what you get then is 4.2. Technically, I'd get rid of 4.2 schools from the bottom, but of course the only possibility is to get rid of 4. So Northwestern, Nebraska, Iowa, Maryland, the next one up is Illinois, and Illinois would be the answer. Everybody see how we're doing to find those? Okay, so one more thing with percentiles, which is this. Why is this data different from all of the other things that we looked at? Because there are multiple things that have the same number, that's right. The one before that, I had very specific numbers, so there couldn't possibly be ties. There were some of them that were pretty close, but there are definitely one that is above another. Here, on the other hand, we're rounding everything to the nearest million, and so there are lots and lots and lots of ties as we go through this list. So an obvious question is, what do you do if there is a tie? What do you do, for example, if I said I want to know the percentile for London, okay, which happens to be tied with Dhaka in Bangladesh and with Rio? Well, remind me again what I said percentile meant. What does percentile mean? Yeah, it's the percent that are less. So if I want to find the percentile for London, I don't care about Rio. And I also don't care about Dhaka. I count the ones that are actually less than that. How many places are less than London? And yeah, I think we do have 5 of them. So what we would do is take 5 out of 25, which is what percentile? It would be 20. And London would be at the 20th percentile, Rio de Janeiro is at the 20th percentile, and Dhaka is at the 20th percentile. They all are tied at that percentile. And you could do the same thing with anything that has a tie. You skip the tie and go to the one that's actually less, okay? So I'm going to ask a couple of other questions. I am thinking of a place, and that place happens to be, I just screwed up what I was thinking of, but that place happens to be at the 96th percentile. What place am I thinking of? So I heard somebody say Mexico City. Is that the right answer? I also heard Tokyo, and one of those is right. And I'm pretty sure the right answer is Tokyo. And that's because, again, if I do 24 out of 25, I get 96. That's what I did. You're going to get like 0.96 times 25 is 24. That means I want to get rid of the bottom 24. And the only thing that's left after you get rid of that is Tokyo. It's the next one up. So yeah, it is going to be Tokyo. All right, I'm thinking of a city again. And this time, if I'm doing it right, yeah, the city I'm thinking of is at the 52nd percentile. What place am I thinking of? Say that again. One of the ones with 15, okay. Which is why no matter what you said, I could probably come up with and say, no, you're wrong, it's the other one. But she's exactly right. It is going to be one of the ones with 15, because what you'd want to do is take 0.52 times 25. You get 13 places you've got to get rid of. Well, there's 12 over at the right-hand side. One more makes 13. So I get rid of everything from Manila on down. The next possibilities are Cairo and Calcutta, and either of those is going to be at the 52nd percentile. Everybody follow how we're getting all of those as we go through things. So today we're going to give you a little bit of practice working with percentiles, and then tomorrow we'll go on and talk about quartiles, which is the other thing. You've actually, without knowing it, already done those because that's what appears as Q on the readout on your calculator when you're like finding the median. But we'll do some problems with percentiles and then go from there.